Hi guys, welcome to my channel and another World of Warcraft video. Should you play the modern World of Warcraft Classic, World of Warcraft Cataclysm Classic, or World of Warcraft Season of Discovery? Yes, there are 4 versions of the game, and I imagine how hard it is for a new or returning player to choose the right one. Making the right choice is important, because games like World of Warcraft suggest that you invest a lot of time. It is not some single-player adventure game that you can play for 10, 20, or 30 hours. Complete the game and you are done with it. World of Warcraft may require hundreds of hours of gameplay to fully experience the game, and it is not free. You must pay a subscription fee no matter which version you choose to play, and in some cases you must pay extra for expansions. If you watch the entire video, you will be much more prepared to make the right choice and save your time and money. I will explain as clearly as possible each version of the game and for whom they are a good choice. I won't dive too deeply into each version with overly specific details because I don't want this video to overwhelm those of you who lack prior WoW experience. But feel free to ask questions about the game in the comments below if you want to know more. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. The Retail WoW is the modern version of the game. It is a result of the evolution of the game since its release back in 2004 and many expansions. Retail is the version with the most advanced graphics and interface, the widest variety of character races and classes, mounts and pets, the widest variety of game modes, and contains many different features that the other versions don't. It offers the most diverse PvE and PvP content. Almost every 2 years, a new expansion of the game is being released, which usually brings new territories to explore, new dungeons, new raids, new character customization features, and interface changes. A new expansion can also add new character races and classes to the game, as well as improved graphics through new technologies and effects. The current expansion is called Dragonflight or The War Within if you are watching this video after its release. If you want to always play the latest content in the world of WoW and know that sooner or later something new will be added, this is your game. Of course, there are other factors you may want to consider. The content of the game itself, as well as the character progression and leveling system, leads to a focus on the endgame content rather than the experience during the leveling of the character. Unlike the other versions of the game, the leveling process is much faster, even too fast, which makes many elements in the game at this stage pointless, such as the story, leveling professions, how much gold you have, and what items you get along the way. There is an introductory tutorial that will explain the basics of the game. But after that, the leveling process, the story, cinematics, the quests, and the WoW characters can be very confusing for new players. This is because the game is a complex mix of multiple story timelines brought by each expansion. It may be even hard for you to decide where to level your character after the tutorial. There are choices you may not understand without additional research. Retail WoW can be both very friendly and very unfriendly to new players at the same time. In many cases, it shows you exactly where you should go or what you should do, but not everything has been made intuitive for new players. The game offers you various options for how to play the game, but somehow it expects that you have prior knowledge and experience if you want to make the best possible choice. The gaming experience while leveling in modern WoW also depends on how you choose to do it. Many players are leveling their characters by doing same dungeons over and over, using the group finder system, which is probably the most boring way. The group finder lets you find a group for dungeons, battlegrounds, and many other events with one press of a button. But instead, there are many nice places with fun quests that you can explore as a new player. Everything becomes important when you reach the maximum level of your character and you can play the end game content of the current expansion. Endgame is where retail starts to shine, and that is the reason why people playing that version want to level their characters as soon as possible. You have so much more things to do here compared to the other WoW versions. More raids and dungeons with different difficulties, more battlegrounds, arenas, quests, and other events. The content and the game mechanics becomes more difficult and challenging, but also very time-consuming if you don't want to fall behind. Retail WoW is a better choice for players who have a lot of time to spend in the game. Sometimes the game feels like a never-ending race, which can be very stressful and unpleasant for people who can't play every day and several hours per day. Classes in modern World of Warcraft are much more balanced, which is a result of many changes during all these years and expansions. It means that all characters that can heal, for example, usually can perform this role almost equally, and all depends mostly on the player's skills. Of course, different classes have some advantages and disadvantages in specific area, but nothing compared to the situation in the other WoW versions. Retail WoW has the most complicated character skills tree. This can be a huge advantage for more experienced players because they know how to make their character stronger. But for new players, all these skill and ability options can be a huge challenge and can even push them away from the game. At some point, the player needs to learn and optimize too many things. That makes this version more suitable for experienced players or for those who like complex gameplay. I'm not saying the game isn't a good choice for casual players, but it will be more difficult for them to play some parts of the content. In modern WoW, you can change the appearance of most of your gear with the visuals of other items. This can be done through the in-game system called transmogrification. Many players enjoy collecting items from different zones, dungeons, and raids, and add them to their collection. With that, they can change their style at any time. With a high enough level character, you can solo older dungeons and raids and get many good-looking visuals for your gear. This feature is also available in Cataclysm Classic, but not in the other versions of the game. This is something you should consider if you care about the aesthetics of your character. In retail, you can buy the so-called WoW tokens with in-game gold and exchange them for Battle.net balance, pets, mounts, other Blizzard games, and most importantly, game time. With this feature, spending time making more and more in-game gold makes sense. If you develop the right professions, if you know how to make profit from auction house trade, you can make a lot of gold and save some real money for subscription fees. Of course, that sounds tempting and very easy, but it isn't. You need to know how the WoW market works, and you need to dedicate a lot of time specifically for making gold, which is not what you will always want to do in the game. WoW tokens are also available in Cataclysm Classic. Blizzard don't provide statistics about the player base in each version, but considering the number of servers and the fact that many of them are with status high or full, I assume that retail has the largest number of players, way ahead from the second. The idea behind WoW Classic, released in 2019, was the WoW community once again to be able to experience the game in its original state before the release of its first expansion, the Burning Crusade. This version was highly anticipated by those who believed that the modern WoW wasn't going in the right direction and no more provides a good level of gaming experience. The first weeks and even months after its release, there was a huge interest in this version, to such extent that the servers were overloaded and players had to wait for hours to be able to log in. I don't know if this version met the expectations of the players who were waiting for it, but it definitely divided the WoW community. This version is more known as Classic Era. It is most close to what World of Warcraft was like 20 years ago. Yes, it's a 20-year-old game, and you will definitely notice the outdated graphics and user interface. The game has its advantages and disadvantages. In Classic Era, the focus is primarily on the gaming experience during the leveling of the characters. From the start, from level 1, everything matters. How much gold you have, what items you have found, what professions you are leveling, and many other elements of the game. That part of the game can be very interesting and exciting, especially if you are not trying to level your character as soon as possible. This makes the game a very good choice for casual players, especially for those who have much less time to play. Let's say today you have 1 hour for playing. You can log in, make a dungeon, collect some resources, finish some quests, and you will not feel that you are falling behind. You can even stop playing for months, and when you return, you can continue playing like it yesterday. It was the last time you logged out. If you stop playing retail WoW for months, the risk of finding your character with obsolete gear and dozens of new things you need to learn is very high. In Classic Era, there is no group finder system like in retail. You must find other group members yourself mainly via the in-game chat. This is good from a social perspective, but there is one big problem. These days, it is very hard to find people to group with, especially for low and mid-level events. This is mostly because there are not enough new players coming to the game and the overall decline in population. It may take hours to find a group, and it requires a constant advertising in specific chat channels. Searching for group for hours in Classic Era is a very unpleasant experience, and sometimes I miss the group finder system from retail. In most servers, the population is low these days. That makes the game more suitable for players who prefer solo adventures or have enough friends to play with. Classic Era is the easiest version in terms of character customization and fight mechanics. One downside is that because of certain limitations and misbalances in the class mechanics, some classes are preferred for specific roles. For example, Mages and rogues are the preferred damage dealers, the former because of the strong area of effect damage, and the latter for the strong single target damage. Warriors expected to tank and the priest to heal, no matter that both classes also have a damage dealing specialization. Sometimes this can be annoying because the other people you are playing with may expect or even insist that you play a role or a class you don't want. The problem with WoW Classic Endgame is that it provides very limited content, and nothing will ever change, which was actually the core of the concept. Once you reach the maximum level and go through all available content, if you get bored, there's nothing you can do about it, especially if you don't have friends to play with. But even then, doing same things over and over is not fun at all. At some point, you will probably want to go to another WoW version or change to an entirely different game. Classic Era also has the so-called hardcore servers. The hardcore gameplay is very similar to the hardcore mode in other games such as Diablo, where you must not let your character die. If that happens, the game is over. There are also other restrictions in those servers that make the gaming experience more challenging. It is definitely not suitable for everyone, and can even be very frustrating for some players, because there is a huge risk of losing everything you have achieved after playing for hours, including for reasons out of your control, such as server disconnects and game bugs. As I mentioned earlier, in 2021, Blizzard basically created a third WoW game when they started adding the old expansions on top of WoW Classic, while also keeping the latter as a separate game by the name Classic Era. In May 2024, Blizzard released Cataclysm Classic, which is actually the third official expansion of WoW that was released for the first time in 2010. It is unknown whether Blizzard will continue to add more of the older expansions in the future. It probably depends on the success of Cataclysm Classic. I know that all this can be very confusing, especially for new WoW players. Blizzard just failed to deliver a version that can once again unite the World of Warcraft community. I can be right and wrong at the same time if I say that Cataclysm Classic is somewhere in between the modern WoW and WoW Classic Era. With every expansion added, the game becomes more complex, and the focus shifts more and more to the endgame content. You can still have a lot of fun while leveling, unless you hurry to level your character. There is more content you can explore compared to Classic Era, and it is more forgiving than Retail if you need to stop playing for a while. You have more choices in terms of classes, races, and character specializations than Classic Era, but that doesn't come at a cost of complex fight mechanics and character customizations as in Retail. Overall, Cataclysm Classic contains some bad and good things from both worlds. In my opinion, it is a good choice for new or returning casual players. For those of you who have prior experience with Cataclysm, it depends on whether you like that specific expansion. The endgame provides more options than Classic Era, but not as rich and complex as Retail. The big question here remains if Blizzard will continue to add more expansions to that version of the game, or the content will be limited, like in Classic Era. This version of the game has a large number of players, and that will probably not change soon, especially if at some point Blizzard confirmed the release of Mists of Pandaria Classic, the next expansion in the list. Choosing a WoW version became even more complicated when in 2021, Blizzard released a seasonal version of the game. These time-limited servers represent a new way of experiencing Classic Era, with faster character leveling and more difficult content. Players start their journey from scratch and experience the game in a different way. In November 2023 came out the second season by the name of Season of Discovery. Depending on when you are watching this video, the season may be at its last phase, maybe over, or another one has already started. In Season of Discovery, Blizzard drastically changed the Classic Era experience by adding different elements from the Retail WoW, mainly in the form of character skills, spells, abilities, and many new items. Some of the original dungeons were turned into raids, with completely changed fight mechanics and rewards. Something specific to the seasonal version is the release of content in phases. In Season of Discovery, each phase unlocked a certain amount of character levels, which provided access to more content. For example, the first phase had a character level limit of 25, and there was one 25-level raid available. Seasonal servers give Blizzard the opportunity to experiment with some new ideas, and some of them were successful. It is an interesting mix of all versions of the game. Season of Discovery had a lot of fans, and unfortunately, the game lost a lot of players, mainly because of prolonged phases and lack of new content. Guilds started to struggle finding enough people for raid events, which led to even more people losing motivation and leaving the game. Each season may introduce different gaming experience during leveling and endgame. You should know that once the season is over, the game is over. No more new content, no more progression. You will have the option to transfer your characters to another classic version of WoW with certain restrictions, or they will be deleted. I don't recommend the seasonal version for new players unless they are able to join at some point during the first half of the season. Joining at the end of a season is a waste of time, no matter if you are a new or an experienced player. So, with all that said, let's get into my conclusion. There is no bad WoW version, but also there isn't a perfect one. Your choice depends on many factors: your playstyle, how much time do you have for gaming, what is your experience with World of Warcraft and other MMORPG games, and even whether you prefer a more modern and high-quality graphics. Classic versions of WoW are beginner-friendly. It is much easier to understand the fight mechanics, the character skills, and what is going on in the game in general. Retail WoW is more complex and can be confusing for new players. Of course, this can be overcome with additional research about the game and how to improve as a player. Classic versions are also more suitable for casual players who want to play a game without any pressure or competitive ambitions, and also for players who have less time to play. Retail requires much higher commitment if you want to play that part of the game that actually makes it modern and different. Otherwise, you will often feel that you are falling behind. Retail is a great game for hardcore players and for those who have a lot of WoW experience. For WoW Classic Era, it is specific that it will not receive any new content. Once you finish your leveling journey and you go through all the endgame content, you may quickly lose interest in the game. But the leveling journey is what makes this version special. The leveling stage in Retail is not fun at all, in my opinion. It is a race towards the endgame content, where the fun begins in Retail. Retail also has a lot more features than any other version of the game. If you like idea to be able to collect hundreds of pets, hundreds of mounts, and to have countless aesthetic choices for your gear, Retail is the right choice for you. Seasonal versions of WoW are a very interesting choice, but only if you manage to join on time. So this was the shortest possible description of the existing versions of World of Warcraft. I hope that this video was helpful to you and has made your choice easier. In that case, please hit the like button, and feel free to share in the comments below which version of WoW you are currently playing and whether you enjoy it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.